Have you ever, looked at the food on your plate and actually wondered if it holds some kind of hidden power? Like something to protect your brain, especially against something as, well, daunting as Alzheimer's disease.
Mm.
It's a question that I think sparks curiosity in so many of us, particularly with all the buzz around natural remedies and dietary stuff these days.
Absolutely.
So today, we're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating topic that's been making waves in health research: the potential impact of coconut oil on Alzheimer's and, other forms of dementia.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's is, well, it's a huge global challenge. It impacts millions of lives, placing this immense burden on families, on healthcare systems worldwide.
It really does.
And the urgency to find effective interventions, something beyond just managing symptoms, it's never been greater.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission today is to try and cut through some of the noise, really distill the actual scientific evidence. We're looking at a recent, pretty rigorous systematic review and meta-analysis, which, for those unfamiliar, is kind of like researchers meticulously gathering every puzzle piece from lots of different studies.
Right. Putting it all together.
Exactly. Fitting them together to see the whole picture. We'll unpack the proposed mechanisms, uncover maybe some surprising facts, and highlight the important nuances about coconut oil's potential role in cognitive health.
And that urgency you mentioned, it truly cannot be overstated. I mean, when you think about it, current medications primarily offer symptomatic relief. They often just maybe slow the decline slightly,
Right.
without really affecting the underlying disease progression. So the idea that something as common, as accessible as coconut oil could potentially play a role, well, it's incredibly compelling.
Yeah.
It really pushes us, to explore every single avenue for new approaches to this devastating condition.
So, okay, before we jump right into the coconut oil itself, let's just quickly set the stage. What exactly are we up against with Alzheimer's?
Well, it's the big one.
It's the most common form of dementia, right? Accounting for something like 60 to 80% of all dementia cases globally. That's affecting, over 50 million people.
That's the staggering number, yes. And as you highlighted, the medications we currently have, they really only alleviate symptoms. They don't halt or reverse the disease's progression.
Which is exactly why there's such an intense focus on other possibilities, especially, in nutrition and lifestyle.
Makes sense.
And that's where coconut oil enters the conversation. Its popularity has really surged in recent years, hasn't it? Largely due to its rich content of medium-chain triglycerides, MCTs.
The famous MCTs.
Yeah, and its long history of traditional use in many cultures for various health benefits.
Right. And one of the really intriguing aspects here is getting a handle on the biological hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
When we talk about AD, we're essentially talking about a condition characterized by two main culprits. Neurofibrillary tangles, think of them as twisted protein strands inside brain cells.
Like nuts.
Kind of like knots, yeah. And amyloid beta plaques, which are these sticky clumps of protein that build up outside the brain cells.
Okay, so gunk, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Like gunk or debris accumulating in the brain, disrupting its normal function. Now, the interest in coconut oil, particularly virgin coconut oil, VCO, it stems from a couple of key things.
Mm-hmm.
Firstly, it seems to have antioxidative properties, and we know there's a pretty well-established link between oxidative stress, cellular rust, basically, and neurodegeneration.
Right.
Secondly, it's important to distinguish between, say, plain copra oil, which comes from dried coconut meat,
Okay.
and virgin coconut oil, which is typically obtained by cold pressing fresh coconuts. VCO, the virgin kind, retains a much richer nutrient profile. It's got things like vitamin E, various polyphenols, which contribute to its potential health effects.
So given all that, it really sounds like coconut oil isn't just for stir fries anymore, does it?
Hey, definitely not.
It's way more than just a tropical flavor. Let's peel back another layer then. Talk about its chemical structure. It's really rich in these medium-chain fatty acids, MCFAs.
That's the key.
We're talking a significant amount of lauric acid, like almost half its content, right?
Around 49%, yeah.
Plus other key ones like myristic acid, caprylic acid, cupric acid. Okay, let's unpack this then. How do these unique MCFAs actually work their magic in the brain? What's the proposed mechanism?
Okay, this is where it gets really clever. These MCFAs, specifically the MCTs in coconut oil, they have a unique metabolic pathway.
Right.
When you consume them, they get absorbed and processed by the liver, where they're rapidly metabolized into something called ketone bodies.
Ketone bodies, okay.
The main ones are hydroxybutyrate and acetoacetate. Now, here's the really crucial part. These ketone bodies can act as an alternative energy source for brain cells.
Ah, like a backup fuel.
Exactly, providing a backup fuel supply. This is super important in AD patients because they often experience maybe a 20 to 25% shortage of glucose in their brains. Their glucose metabolism is impaired.
Wow, that much.
Yeah. So imagine your brain running on low battery, and suddenly you have this highly efficient backup generator kicking in.
That's a great analogy.
And these ketone bodies are amazing because they can efficiently cross the blood-brain barrier, that protective shield around the brain, delivering this vital energy. But beyond just fuel, they also seem to improve mitochondrial function, the powerhouses of our cells, and reduce oxidative stress,
Okay.
offering these neuroprotective benefits that could potentially slow disease progression.
That's incredible. So essentially a backup fuel source for the brain that also helps protect it.
In theory, yes.
So if these ketone bodies are giving the brain this much-needed energy boost, what does the actual scientific evidence say? Did this powerful mechanism actually translate into, real-world results in the studies they looked at?
Good question.
The systematic review and meta-analysis we're diving into, they meticulously searched articles published between, January 2015 and June 2023.
That's right. A pretty recent window.
And after a rigorous screening, they pinpointed 7 studies that met their strict criteria. And this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The analysis revealed consistent and, importantly, statistically significant results. It showed that coconut oil improved cognitive scores in patients with Alzheimer's disease compared to the control groups.
So a measurable difference.
Yeah, not just a slight nudge. The numbers suggested a genuine measurable improvement. Quantitatively, the overall effect of coconut oil on AD was statistically significant, which suggests these findings aren't likely just down to chance.
Right. And to really put that into perspective, the strength of those findings is actually quite impressive for a dietary intervention.
How so?
Well, they calculated something called the standardized mean difference, or SMD. It came out at 0.55. Now, for anyone not deep in statistical jargon, that's classified as a medium effect size, according to what's known as Cohen's d interpretation.
Okay, medium effect size. What does that mean practically?
Practically, for you, the listener, it suggests that over 70%, 70.9 to be precise, of patients in the coconut oil group had a cognitive score greater than the average score of the control group.
Wow. Okay.
Furthermore, there was about a 65% probability that if you randomly picked a person from the coconut oil group, they'd have a higher score than a person picked at random from the control group.
Sounds pretty compelling.
And there's another way to look at it, the number needed to treat. Basically, on average, you'd need to treat roughly 5 individuals, 5.4 technically, with coconut oil to achieve 1 additional positive outcome compared to the control group.
5 people for 1 extra positive result.
Exactly, which indicates a meaningful impact, not just statistically significant, it paints a compelling picture, as you said.
Those numbers really do give a sense of the scale, the potential impact here. What stands out to you about these findings, especially when we start drilling down into the specific cognitive tests they used, like the mini mental state exam, the MMSE, or the 7-minute screen?
Yeah, that's where the nuances really emerge.
Because beyond the overall stats, there are some interesting details, right? For instance, one study, the Hu Yang study, saw a pretty remarkable improvement in MMSE scores in the coconut oil group versus placebo.
A big jump, yeah.
Like a 38.92% improvement. That's the kind of shift that could potentially impact daily life, maybe making it noticeably easier for patients to remember things or follow conversations.
Potentially, yes.
And they even found that interesting gender difference, though it wasn't statistically significant. Women showed slightly greater improvement than men.
That's right, 39.7% for women versus about 37% for men, but yes, statistically not a significant difference between them.
Still interesting, though.
It is, but it's true. The overall picture is encouraging. But what's fascinating, and a really key nuance here, is that the improvements weren't always uniform across all cognitive domains.
Yeah.
Which really encourages us to think critically, For instance, if we look at another study, the Jose Enrique study, which used that 7-minute screen battery, it assesses different areas of cognition.
Right.
We saw some surprising variability, while some areas, like Benton's temporal awareness test, saw substantial boosts. We're talking over 140% improvement in the coconut oil group.
Wow.
There was a really surprising, kind of counterintuitive finding. In the clock drawing test, which assesses visuospatial memory, scores actually worsened for some females in the coconut oil group.
Worsened? That's unexpected.
Very unexpected. It really highlights that the brain's response is incredibly complex. It's not a simple all-or-nothing improvement.
Definitely not.
We also saw mixed results in areas like verbal fluency and episodic memory. There were some improvements in the intervention group, sure, but also some interesting gains in the control group, especially among males in some tests.
Huh. Why would that happen?
Well, those control group gains could be down to what we often call the placebo effect.
Right.
Or maybe baseline differences between participants they started with, or even psychological factors, like just being in a study makes you try harder, that kind of thing.
I see.
So it's definitely not a simple universal fix. There are clearly individualized responses happening.
That's a lot of detail, but it really does underscore the importance of looking beyond just the headline numbers and appreciating the subtleties, doesn't it?
Absolutely crucial.
So, okay, moving beyond the test scores then. What does this all mean? How might coconut oil be influencing the disease at an even deeper level, like molecularly?
Yeah, this is really fascinating, too. It seems coconut oil might actually inhibit the release of those problematic amyloid beta peptides.
The sticky plaques we talked about.
Exactly. The ones that accumulate in the brains of AD patients. It seems to do this by inhibiting a protein called ARF1.
ARF1.
Think of ARF1 like a delivery truck. It brings the building blocks for those amyloid plaques, the amyloid precursor protein, or APP, to the surface of brain cells.
Okay.
By apparently slowing down that delivery truck, coconut oil might reduce the production of those damaging amyloid beta peptides.
So it's interfering with the plaque production line, essentially.
That seems to be one proposed mechanism, yes. And furthermore, remember those ketone bodies derived from the MCTs?
Yeah, the backup fuel.
They offer broader systemic benefits, too, which is important because overall health definitely impacts brain health.
Right, it's all connected.
Exactly. Ketone bodies have been shown to potentially lower LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, and total cholesterol. They've also been observed in some studies to reduce systolic blood pressure and improved insulin resistance.
Okay, those are all pretty significant factors for general health.
They are. All relevant to overall metabolic and cardiovascular health, which can indirectly but significantly support brain health.
Okay, so we have this potential alternative fuel source, influence on the actual molecular pathways of the disease, even broader systemic benefits. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
But are there any downsides, anything we need to be wary of? It's rare for something to be all benefit, no risk, right?
That's a really important question, and yes, the review definitely highlights some crucial cautionary notes.
Okay.
While promising, coconut oil is a saturated fat, and like other saturated fats, consuming it in large amounts can be a precursor to cardiovascular diseases.
The heart health angle.
Precisely. So for individuals who already have heart concerns or are at high risk, intake really needs to be carefully considered. It's not a free pass.
Makes sense. Any other potential issues?
Yes. Other potential detrimental effects mentioned include things like gastrointestinal discomfort, bloating, upset stomach,
Right.
potential weight gain, and, as linked to the heart health, alterations in lipid profiles, your blood fats. So it's definitely not a simple miracle cure that you can just consume without thinking about it. In fact, some dietitians actually advise limiting or even completely avoiding coconut oil intake because of these potential risks, especially when you look at it in the context of an overall balanced diet.
So it's a really complex picture.
It truly is. Individuals absolutely need to consider their whole health profile and ideally talk to healthcare professionals before making big changes.
Okay, this has been a lot of information from brain fuel and molecular pathways to these potential downsides. How do we pull all these pieces together? What's the coherent picture for our listener?
Right, let's synthesize this. If we connect all these threads, the core finding seems pretty clear. The evidence suggests coconut oil shows a positive, statistically significant effect on cognitive scores in Alzheimer's patients based on this meta-analysis.
Okay.
This suggests that dietary interventions based on coconut oil might offer an effective alternative, or maybe more realistically an important adjunct, something used alongside existing medications.
Right, not necessarily replacing them.
Exactly. However, and this is a big however, the nuanced results are just as important. Remember how the benefits varied? By sex, by whether someone had diabetes, even by how severe their AD was.
Yeah, the variability.
That strongly points towards the need for customized or personalized dietary approaches. What works for one person might not work, or might even be detrimental for another.
Personalization seems key.
It really does. And it looks like coconut oil's benefits are most likely coming from that unique impact on brain energy metabolism via those ketone bodies, and possibly its influence on molecular pathways related to amyloid beta and neuroinflammation.
Okay.
This highlights that while we have these exciting findings, we definitely need more in-depth investigation into these processes. That's crucial for refining potential therapeutic uses and figuring out who might benefit most and how.
So summing it all up then for you, the listener, and maybe thinking to the future of brain health. While it looks highly promising, the role of coconut oil in Alzheimer's disease and dementia is definitely complex. It seems to offer potential benefits through its unique metabolic properties, its molecular interactions, but it also really requires careful consideration of potential downsides. And crucially, this need for personalized dietary approaches seems paramount.
Absolutely.
It's clearly not a one-size-fits-all solution, but it certainly opens up some fascinating new avenues for research and potentially for intervention down the line.
It really does. And I think this deep dive truly shows us how seemingly simple dietary components, things we might have in our kitchen cupboards, can have such profound and complex effects on our health.
Yeah.
It really invites us all, doesn't it, to critically examine what we consume and how it truly impacts something as intricate, as complex as brain health. It leaves you wondering, doesn't it, what aspects of your daily diet might hold similar hidden potential or perhaps unexpected risks if we really examine them through a deep dive like this.
That is a truly thought-provoking question for all of us to ponder. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope you continue your own journey of curiosity and informed living. Until next time.